I thought I was done with the series until someone in the comments gave me the idea to make a list of scenes too expensive to be made in Game of Thrones. Like the other 5 videos, these 10 big moments that didn't make the show will be in no particular order. I'll just be going with the flow. Number 10 is the exclusion of war elephants. The whole elephants being a part of Cersei's hired army was more of a comedic moment in the final season, but it was also a wink at book readers.
Horses
2,000.
and elephants.
No elephants, Your Grace.
That's disappointing.
The sellswords that Cersei employed were the Golden Company, a very prestigious group who go to battle with a large number of elephants. These animals are not native to Westeros, but are all over Essos, where the Golden Company operate. The general, Harry Strickland, mentions elephants don't travel the seas well, which is proven in the books. Some died sailing between the 2 continents, but the ones that survived have been very destructive in the Stormlands. There aren't many things more terrifying than a massive elephant marching towards you, well other than a dragon.
I wanted those elephants.
Number 9 is Castle Rock, and a very understandable decision by the creators to alter its appearance, because what we saw in Season 7 was definitely not what was described from the books. But a 5-minute scene is not worth all that money to digitally create it, because it's not like a castle like this exists in our real world. It just makes more sense to use one somewhere in Europe. But if it were an animated series, or the budget magically became unlimited, it would have been a fun location and something special to look at. This location on the coast of the Westerlands was built by an ancient and long extinct family called Casterlys. Within a massive stone hill, 3 times the height of the wall, is a gold mine and the home of the Lannisters. As thousands of years passed, more of the hill became a castle, turning it into an impenetrable fortress. The main entrance, called the Lion's Mouth, is a 200-foot-high natural cavern. With the Lannisters' fortress being so strong, you begin to understand where all their confidence comes from. They were only able to take this castle by somehow tricking the Casterlys. How exactly the Lannister founder did it is lost in history. What we saw in Season 7 was a pretty generic fortress in comparison, and easily taken by the Unsullied alone. Number 8 is the White Walker's armor. While the Night King and his White Walkers wear fairly basic armor, or sometimes no armor at all, in the books it seems almost magical. It's described as reflective or camouflaging, so it's possibly made from the crystals that they use for weapons. Here's a quote from the prologue chapter of the very first book, where we come across a White Walker referred to as an Other here. Its armor seemed to change color as it moved. Here it was white as new fallen snow, there black as shadow. Everywhere dappled the deep grey-green of the trees. The patterns ran like moonlight on water with every step it took. This next one is a little tricky. Valyrian Steel appears to be your average-looking steel in the show, while in the books it's described a little more unique. The steel itself is darker than usual and has ripples all over it. But I mentioned this one as being tricky because there's also one more description. No one in the world is able to create Valyrian Steel now that Valyria has been destroyed, along with a lot of its magic lost. But some have learned how to reforge Valyrian Steel. When Tywin had the Stark's greatsword Ice reforged into 2 smaller swords for his family, the resulting weapons had dark red ripples throughout it. I'm not too sure if the red ripples are directly related to the reforging, or that all Valyrian Steel is supposed to have this appearance, but either way, the show left out any ripples on the sword, or the darker coloring. Just before the Doom of Valyria, House Targaryen left their homeland and migrated to an island in Westeros called Dragonstone. This location was previously just an outpost for the Valyrian Dragonlords, but the Targaryens made it their home, and they chose Dragonstone for a very specific reason: the volcano Dragon Mount. This still active volcano was actually responsible for creating the small island. Valyria was surrounded by 14 volcanoes and had a very warm climate, so Dragonstone had a familiar feel. Plus their dragons could thrive here. They prefer hot temperatures and could make their lairs within the volcano Dragon Mount. We don't spend a lot of time on Dragonstone in Game of Thrones, and most scenes are just filmed in the council room where we see the painted table. They must have really been proud of that set, and I would be too. It does look pretty cool. Right after Dany's dragons were born, her and her small group of followers were left to travel the Red Waste for safety. She wasn't sure where to go, so sent 3 of her blood riders to check out the area, while the rest of the group rested in a ruined city within the desert. Well, one came back with some interesting news. Further south into the Red Waste, he found the skeleton of a long-dead dragon, a corpse so large that he could ride on his horse through its jaws. It's not a very important moment cut from the show, but it would make for a nice scene, looking at baby Drogo and Rhaegal and Viserion while hearing about how large they will become. It would also add a lot more depth to the world building in the show, since dragons were never known to be in this vicinity. It would make for a fun mystery wondering if any other dragons were out there somewhere. A hooded figure who lives beyond the wall and is seemingly the Three-Eyed Raven's servant rides around the tundra on a great elk. Sam Tarly, who he once saved from whites in the 3rd book, names him Cold Hands. This mysterious zombie character was replaced by Benjen Stark in the show, but without the cool elk for a steed. I know it doesn't sound like all that big of a deal, but I think Benjen would have looked more badass on an elk instead of a regular old horse. Unfortunately for the elk in the books, it collapses from the long journey and is feasted upon by Bran and friends. Poor guy. The elk was huge, a great elk, 10 feet tall to shoulder, with a rack of antlers near as wide. The creature sank its knees to let them mount. Here, the rider said, reaching down with a gloved hand to pull Gilly up behind him. Then it was Sam's turn. My thanks, he puffed. Number 3 is direwolf scenes. Even if you haven't read the books, you probably noticed how little the direwolves were utilized. Not only were they not utilized, but in Summers and Shaggy's case, they were kinda just written off. And then there was that stupid scene with Jon telling Ghost to live beyond the wall for no reason. Thank God they reunited before the series finale. I get that it's a lot easier for the books to write plots for the Stark's direwolves than it is for the show, considering how difficult it is to animate large furry beasts. But the bonds between the Starks and their direwolves are an important part of the story. Small moments in the books, like when Ghost gives Jon a rabbit it hunted down, or how vital Greywind was during Robb's war campaign, added a lot to the story. It showed they truly were their guides and protectors. Number 2 is Bran's coma dream. This is his first experience with his green seer magic, so I guess this would be considered a green dream? After Jaime pushed him out of the window and left him unconscious, the Three-Eyed Raven reached out to him. In this coma dream, he was falling while having a lengthy conversation with a raven trying to tell him to fly. Bran reached into his pocket as the darkness spun dizzily around him. When he pulled his hand out, golden kernels slid from between his fingers into the air. They fell with him. The crow landed on his hand and began to eat. Are you really a crow? Bran asked. Are you really falling? The crow asked back. It's just a dream, Bran said. Is it? Asked the crow. I'll wake up when I hit the ground, Bran told the bird. You'll die when you hit the ground, the crow said. It went back to eating corn. This makes you wonder if Bran was actually saved by the Three-Eyed Raven after reading that last line. This interesting chapter continues. He lifted his eyes and saw clear across the narrow sea, to the free cities and the green Dothraki Sea and beyond, to Vos Dothrak under its mountain, to the fabled lands of the Jade Sea, to Ashai by the Shadow where dragons steered beneath the sunrise. Finally he looked north. He saw the wall shining like blue crystal, and his bastard brother Jon sleeping alone in a cold bed, his skin growing pale and hard as the memory of all warmth fled from him. And he looked past the wall, past endless forests cloaked in snow, past the frozen shore and the great blue-white rivers of ice, and the dead plains where nothing grew or lived. North and north and north he looked, to the curtain of light at the end of the world, and then beyond that curtain. He looked deep into the heart of winter, and then he cried out, afraid, and the heat of his tears burned on his cheeks. Now you know, the crow whispered as it sat on his shoulder. Now you know why you must live. I know I mentioned missing direwolf scenes in the show, but one of these moments really stands out. During one of Jon's warg dreams through Ghost, yeah, Jon and Arya are untrained wargs in the books. We learn something very interesting about the direwolves' sibling connection between each other. From extreme distances away, Ghost was able to see how his sister Nymeria and brother Shaggy Dog were doing. Far off, he could hear his packmates calling to him, like to like. They were hunting too. A wild rain lashed down upon his black brother as he tore at the flesh of an enormous goat, washing the blood from where the goat's long horn had raked him. His black brother is referring to Shaggy Dog. Rickon's story is a lot more interesting in the books. Instead of just being killed off because the writers didn't know what to do with him, Rickon is living in the most dangerous location in the north, called Skagos, with his direwolf and Asha. It's the northernmost part in the north, and very secluded from the rest of the kingdom. The Skagosi are so dangerous that the Starks had to forbid them from ever sailing again because of all the trouble they caused in the past. They're known to perform human sacrifices and even cannibalism. So yeah, a real brutal place to take a 4-year-old. But Rickon didn't have very many options since he needed to remain hidden from the world. But what this place is known for is the unicorns. That goat with a long horn Ghost saw Shaggy Dog fighting was one of the island's unicorns. So not only did we get to miss out on Rickon's entire story, but we didn't get to see an awesome fight between a giant wolf and a unicorn. I really wanted to end this video talking about this scene. If any of you readers out there have any more scenes in mind that you would have loved seeing in a Game of Thrones show with unlimited amount of money thrown at it, let's hear it in the comments. I took a little break after Season 8, but I hope you enjoyed this video back. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.